Kevin Garnett. The recent inductee into the Hall of Fame is one of the greatest power forwards of all time. He was a 15-time All-Star, 9-time All-NBA selection, 12-time All-Defensive selection, and one of the only players to win both MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. The Big Ticket was known for quite a few things, such as being a part of the Big Three in Boston with Ray Allen and Paul Pierce, his versatility on the court, and of course, his intense trash talk. There are countless KG trash talk stories, and it's what stood out about him, aside from his play on the court, of course. But there's one thing that many people have forgotten: how he wasted his prime with the Timberwolves, with whom he only made it out of the first round of the playoffs just once, in 2004. What is up with it, everybody? My name is Luke, and in this video, we're going to take a look at how the KG era in Minnesota went wrong. Let's start at the beginning. In 1995, Kevin Garnett was taken with the 5th overall pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves, drafted straight out of high school. He had a solid rookie season, averaging 10 points and 6 rebounds, and would eventually be named to the All-Rookie second team. At the time, the Wolves were still pretty bad, failing to win 30 games for the 7th straight season, and the only other good player on the team was Tom Gugliotta. Regardless, KG was a bright spot on the team, and many were intrigued by what he showed at the time. Fast forward to the 1996 draft, which is known to be one of the greatest draft classes of all time, and the Wolves got the 5th pick again, which they used to draft Ray Allen. But they would trade him for the 4th pick, Stephon Marbury. However, little did they know that this trade would be arguably the first mistake in a long line of bad decisions that would ultimately lead to their failure. At the time, the trade made sense, but in hindsight, it was terrible. Anyway, the Wolves now had a nice duo of Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury to look forward to. In his sophomore season, KG's averages improved a lot, and he made his first All-Star game. The Timberwolves would make the playoffs for the first time in franchise history, but only to be swept by the Rockets in the first round. Despite getting embarrassed like that, Garnett and Marbury showed a lot of promise, and KG was very much on pace to becoming the franchise player. This brings us to the 1997 offseason, when Kevin Garnett would decline a 6-year, $102 million deal because he believed that he could get even more money. And sure enough, he'd eventually get his wish and signed a 6-year, $126 million deal, which was the biggest contract in NBA history at the time. Many analysts were skeptical of this move because they thought it would make it hard for the Timberwolves to surround Garnett with a good supporting cast or even keep their own players. And for the most part, analysts would be right, but we'll get to that in a bit. In the 1997-98 season, KG would improve again, and the Wolves would have their first winning season ever, winning 45 games. They'd lose again in the first round, this time to the Seattle Supersonics, but the future looked bright. Now remember when I said that the contract they gave to KG would come back to haunt them? Here's how it started. Stephon Marbury, who desired money and a bigger role, got jealous of KG's huge deal, and Tom Gugliotta did not get along with Marbury well, and thus decided to leave for the Phoenix Suns after the 1999 lockout was over. 18 games into the regular season, Minnesota would trade Marbury, who was unhappy that the best extension he could get from the team was $50 million less than Garnett's deal, which was a result of the lockout. He got traded for Terrell Brandon, who was still a solid player, but didn't stay for that long either and had a short career overall. But now let's backtrack a little. In the 1998 offseason, Joe Smith signed with the Wolves on a 1-year, $1.75 million deal, despite being offered an $80 million contract from the Warriors. This was seen to be very suspicious, and indeed, there was an under-the-table agreement, which was found due to some legal issues between NBA agents. It turns out that Wolves owner at the time, Glenn Taylor, and general manager Kevin McHale made a deal with Smith to have him sign first 3 small contracts, thus obtaining his bird rights, then offering up to $86 million after the 3rd one. For those of you who don't know what bird rights are, let me briefly explain how the salary cap in the NBA works. Unlike the hard cap, which is used by sports leagues like the NFL and the NHL, the NBA's salary cap is a soft cap. This means that there are certain exceptions in which a team can exceed the cap to sign a player. One of them is the bird rights, named for NBA legend Larry Bird. Bird rights are essentially when a team is allowed to exceed a cap to pay a player on the roster, but he must have been with the team for at least 3 seasons. The intention behind this agreement between the Wolves and Smith was to make it easier for Minnesota to gather other pieces for the team, but unfortunately, they were caught. As a result, the team was fined $3.5 million and lost 3 first-round picks in 2001, 2002, and 2004. Forfeiting these picks proved to be devastating, as the team struggled to build around their superstar player who was in his prime. And with other teams like the Lakers, Spurs, Mavs, and even the Kings, it was a tough mountain to climb. To add salt to the wound, they went through all this trouble just to acquire Joe Smith, who wasn't that good of a player in the first place. Now imagine if the Wolves didn't lose these picks. Let's assume that the picks that they lost would have ended up in the same position if they still had them. That means that in 2001, their pick could have been used to draft somebody like Tony Parker or Zach Randolph, or even Gerald Wallace or Gilbert Arenas. In 2002, it could have been used on somebody like Tayshaun Prince or Nanat Kristic. In 2004, it could have been used on a player like Anderson Varejao or Beno Udrih. Yikes. That's a lot of guys that could have made up a great supporting cast. And for most of this stretch until 2003, Kevin Garnett's best teammates on the Wolves were probably Wally Szczerbiak and a very young Chauncey Billups, who leave the team in 2002 to sign with Detroit. Needless to say, the Wolves were unable to build a competent roster, and this punishment that they received was a big reason why. In the 2003-04 season, the Wolves finally got a solid supporting cast, getting Latrell Sprewell and Sam Cassell, and the Timberwolves would win a franchise record 58 games, and KG took home the MVP. Unfortunately for them though, the Lakers put together a last-ditch effort for a championship run by adding Gary Payton and Karl Malone to their squad, who, although were on their last legs, were still serviceable. And the Timberwolves would fall to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals in 6 games. After that season, they would never make the playoffs again in the Kevin Garnett era. This season was the only time during KG's tenure that the Wolves would make it past the first round of the playoffs. So what went wrong with the Kevin Garnett era in Minnesota? Well, it all started with KG getting a massive deal, which made it hard for the Timberwolves to build their team, then losing Marbury and Gugliotta for basically nothing. Then of course the punishment from the salary cap scandal put a massive dent on their progress too. And this poor management was a common trend for the Wolves, who've only made the playoffs once since 2004. KG was basically carrying his team for most of his prime to nothing much, which is a pity considering how much of a monster he was. As a fun fact, he led the team in all 5 major statistical categories in the 2002-03 season, having a per-game stats of 23 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, and over a steal and block. And that sums up the story of Kevin Garnett's time with the Timberwolves. Even though it didn't go that well, everything worked out for him in the end, as he won a ring in 2008 and made it into the Hall of Fame. Congrats KG! Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this and your favorite Kevin Garnett moments. And with that, I'm out. See you guys next time.